Who the Wild Things Are with Ryan McGuire.
You gotta listen to your body.
Oh my God, maybe, I could get out there, I could do this.
Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
I was in tears. I was just like, that's the best, man.
Welcome back to Who the Wild Things Are. My name is Ryan McGuire, and I'm here to bring you conversations with the most wild folks on the planet. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend. Appreciate you guys. Let's get it going. The clock is a new addition because I never know how long we've been going. And sometimes you get deep and you come out and you're like, have we been here for 6 hours or like 16 minutes?
Totally.
Let's get it rocking. Mike, thank you so much for joining. I've wanted to have you on the pod for a long time. I think when I first saw your content, I thought that must be the most well-dressed strongman I've ever seen in my life. So I think your story is really cool, and I think you've got a lot to share with the world. So I think maybe we'll just kick it off by you introducing yourself. Tell us, kind of who you are and what you might be known for.
Okay, yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me here. I love your home and studio. And so my name's Mike Aidala. I'm a performance coach. I'm a lifetime athlete. I don't really resonate with the term hybrid athlete, but that would definitely be what I do. I do a lot of different modalities. I'm a partner. I'm an aspiring stepfather. I'm not officially, but kind of acting that role now, which is great. And so, yeah, it's a little bit about who I am.
Right on. So tell us a little bit about the background. How did you get involved in the strength and conditioning world, and where did that start out?
So I've always been a coach, and I've always been an athlete, like I was saying before. And I started off doing college football. Well, okay. I guess even before that, my mom always said I never met a ball that I didn't like. So I was just constantly playing sports when I was younger. And thank goodness my parents would just shuttle me around from practice to practice. And I was really fortunate in that type of way. And so the only sport I never played was lacrosse, which I do have a little bit of a regret on. But it's fine.
I feel like we can make that happen.
Yeah.
We'll probably get on Amazon.
I was thinking, I have some buddies that play out here in Colorado, but let's see. Yeah, so my main two sports were basketball and football.
Okay.
And then I wound up playing football in college. And then after football, actually even before that, I learned about strength and conditioning in high school because I was a quarterback and a corner in high school. And I really liked playing defense. I really liked being a corner. And I led New York State interceptions my senior year and really enjoyed being in open space. But then in college, since I was about 6 foot, maybe 195 in high school, when you go to college, the coach is like, well, you're going to gain probably 40 pounds, being here with strength and conditioning, eating, recovering, whatever. And so he's like, we're going to put you at Mike, middle linebacker. And I was like, okay, sweet. I've never played that before in my life. I'm going to get eaten alive. I need to get bigger and stronger.
Sure.
And so one of my buddies was working out with a coach named Mark Chasnoff who taught him how to Olympic weightlift. And I never knew what that was, but I went to Mark's house, and in his basement he had what I didn't know at the time, but probably one of the best weight sets in the United States, Elikio bars, plates, just the nicest equipment that was all in his basement, all dusty, from the 70s and the 80s. And he had one platform, and he taught me and this other kid how to weightlift. And we just used the empty bar, for about 2 months.
Wow. And
he didn't let us put on any weight in terms of the skill of snatching and clean and jerking, which is the sport of Olympic weightlifting. We could squat, bench, and we never deadlifted, but we would do pulls, which is essentially like a deadlift. And then after 2 months, the third month, started adding some weight to the bar and wound up clean and jerking 300 pounds. And over 4 months, gained 35 pounds.
Wow.
Not of muscle, but a lot of muscle and some fat. And I was just eating everything. So he told me, he's like, if you want to get bigger, you just need to eat more food. And so he said, after your regular meal at dinner, eat a full rotisserie chicken every night. And so I just ate a chicken every night.
Okay.
As a hungry 18-year-old, wanting to get bigger for football, which was my life at the time. yeah, got a lot bigger and got a lot stronger.
And that kind of takes you into this role. I'm guessing you being an athlete kind of transitioned you into coaching athletes. Was it more in the barbell area, or were you a sport-specific athlete?
Yeah, so the New York Jets came to my college for training camp my junior year.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to intern with their strength and conditioning staff during that training camp. It was a few months in the summertime, and they'd never had an intern before. And so I was very young, like very hungry, wanting to be the best strength and conditioning coach that I could be. Like, that was my dream. And so, get to the facility at 5 a.m., leave at 9 or 10 p.m., and they never had an intern before. So they're like, you're not an intern, you're a coach. Go coach LaDainian Tomlinson how to do kettlebell swing. Go coach Antonio Holmes how to do, his PT stuff. Like, just right into the fire. Like,
wow.
Going for it. And of course,
and for folks that don't know, these are like legitimate superstar football players.
Yeah, like Pro Bowlers. That year, they had a bunch of Pro Bowlers, which was so cool because they would take, I was get to meet these guys who are my idols and then get to actually work with them. And so then the next year I continued to work with the Jets, and then I went out to California and interned at a place called Athletes Performance, which is now Exos, which at the time they trained the top, like, for the past 8 years, people who have run the fastest 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine.
Wow.
And so they were really known for breaking down the science of the NFL Combine, like how to increase your 40, your vert, your shuttle, your bench, all of those aspects. And so top Division 1 or 2 or 3, whatever, athletes that were expected to do well or be invited to NFL Combine would go to this facility, and every step that they take is calculated. Everything they put in their mouth is calculated. Every weight that they lift is calculated.
Wow.
So that they can get, tenths of a second faster on their 40, which will equate to millions of dollars on a contract. Because if someone comes in running a 4.7 and then they leave running a 4.4 and they're a linebacker, that's going to drastically improve their stock, and then they're going to make more money. Their agent's going to be happy. It's like an investment. And so
Sure.
I was lucky when I was young, I was 22, learning and watching like J.J. Watt or Julio Jones run a 40 and being able to pick out like the inaccuracies within their movement patterns and developing my coaching eye, like athletes that fast. And then I went back to New York and managed and eventually co-owned a strength and conditioning facility. And then and it was really fun getting athletes like bigger, faster, and stronger.
Yeah.
What I really loved was what I call the moment from the field house to the weight room. So a lot of times with athletes, they'll do their speed work first, and then, they'll change, walk into the weight room and do their workout. And in that middle period was, when you hear about life, you hear about like they broke up with their girlfriend, or they're struggling with this, or their family struggles, or whatever's happening. And that more like heart-centered space is what I really loved working with them on. And so it's fun getting them bigger, faster, and stronger. But I wound up leaving that job and going on what I called an alternative graduate studies program.
Okay.
Where I just traveled the world studying what makes people happy and healthy. And that's a lot of the work that I do now as I call it peak performance coach, which is basically helping people live a life that they're proud of.
And when you were coaching, superstars, and you were a young kid, did you have imposter syndrome? Because I feel like if I was there and I'm teaching these people how to be like super fast or super strong, and I haven't yet necessarily done it myself, I feel like I would have such a hard time like coaching anyone else to do these things. Was that ever something that popped up?
It definitely has in the past, but the thing with coaching is that different from like consulting, which is like consulting's I did this, now I'm going to teach you what I did. Coaching's more of observing what's happening and then being able to give like very distinct feedback that then that athlete in this case can then make an adjustment on.
Interesting.
And so it's more of like being an objective third-party observer. Like they can't see themselves running, and so they don't know that their third step is short and that they need to increase their shin angle so they can get more velocity out of their third step. That's going to help increase whatever the time that they're trying to run.
Fascinating.
And so it's similar to I just read Rick Rubin's new book, Creative Act, and he's a music producer, and he is not a musician. And he doesn't know a lot of like the intricacies of how to make music, but he knows how to hear the music that he likes and give feedback that relates to the artist.
Is he the most fascinating character that's alive?
Yeah,
I
probably.
mean, he is like,
He's a legend.
he is something else. I listened to his podcast with Rich Roll, and I'm like, this guy he has something else that most people don't have.
Yeah, I think he cuts to the heart, which is what is really lacking in today's society in a lot of ways. It's something I look up to with you about, like getting back to nature, more heart-centered approach to your life. And it's something that I aspire to do myself, and then to help the people that I work with to move into that space. And it started with athletes, but I still work with athletes, but mostly it's just type A individuals who have like tried to grind so hard in a specific aspect and have lost touch with themselves in a type of way.
I'm as guilty as anyone of that. I know that for sure. Like, I'll pursue something so hard that I end up either beating myself up too much, or rubbing someone the wrong way, or losing sight of focus of what the actual goal is, because I'm so achievement focused, and sometimes that can be to your detriment. It's interesting. So the guys that are coming to you, most of them aren't athletes at this point. They're focusing on other types of success. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff? What's like a common struggle that would come up when someone would approach you as a coach?
They feel overwhelmed. They feel distracted. They don't have a lot of clarity. They've been living what I call the shoulds, right? Like, I should make more money. I should have this job. I should have a better relationship with my wife or my family. And they lose touch with what it is that they truly desire. So they kind of live that like American dream, but it's not their dream necessarily. Or it was for a certain time, but now there's space for a new dream. And they don't quite understand how to get that dream like off the ground, or even see what that dream could be.
They're shitting all over themselves.
Dude, I should talk about the shoulds every single day, man. It's like it's an epidemic. Not a pandemic, it's an epidemic of there's so many things in our world that are telling us what we should be doing. Like, you go on social media, it's like, you should have six-pack, you should run ultramarathon, you should be super strong, you should make a ton of money. And when people get caught up in that world, it just pulls them farther away with, like, again, what Rick Rubin would call like their antennae, right? Like their truth. And so you're trying to live by other people's truth, which then you're never going to actually be able to achieve. So you're farther from your own level of integrity, which then really depletes your level of confidence, which makes it harder to come back in the beginning and take action, or even listen to the thing that you truly want.
I feel really lucky because I have, I don't know, whatever things happened in my life, I've been given like a very clear mission. I want to be outside. I want to move my body, focus on nature and personal health and that sort of thing. What do you do if you're someone that doesn't have that thing? If you don't have that focus, how do you find that focus? Or how would you coach someone through finding that purpose?
Yeah, so one way I like to go about it is this is where like the work comes into place, where it takes first space to be able to allow that to happen. And so the first aspect of coaching is getting clear on what it is that you value, and then eliminating the other things. So if you're trying to find your purpose, but then you're also like inputting all of these shoulds from the outside world, it's making that job a lot harder. It'd be like if you didn't want to drink alcohol, but you were sitting in the bar. You know, it's just get out of the bar, and then we can start to work on these other aspects. And so the one exercise I love to do is writing down 30 things that you've ever been curious about. And the way you know if you're curious about is if you wouldn't mind listening to a podcast about it, reading about it, watching a 10-minute video, or listening to a talk about it, and writing that down in as much detail as possible. And so, for example, instead of writing like, I'm curious or interested in food, you would write like, I'm curious in the types of tomatoes used to make the best, Italian pizza possible. And so you can really dive into all of the different types of tomatoes, and the skin, and the knives that are used to cut them, and the cutting board that's used to cut them, and just like all of those intricacies.
Yeah.
And so you have these 30 things, and then you break those down and look at, okay, where are the similarities between some of these 30 things, and how can I put those together, match it with something I really care about, which is like a big problem that I see in the world, which for you is probably people not spending enough time out in nature, and then mixing those things together, and that creates your purpose.
That's
and then
a
you
really
get
cool
creative
tool.
around like ways to implement that,
Sure.
or finding businesses you can join, or creating other things that you can do by yourself.
And you've probably applied this in your own life, as some collection of finding out how people think and work, and also the passion for helping men and then you've kind of combined those into, okay, my purpose is helping men work on their own thought processes and their approaches.
Totally, yeah. There's a great quote by Mary Oliver, and I'm going to butcher exactly what it is, but it's like, you have to let the soft animal of yourself love the things that you love. And I think a lot of people should and try to love or like other things that aren't true to them, and it just creates a lot of internal angst. And so when you can allow yourself to love the things that you love, it creates so much ease, and you feel better about the work that you're putting out into the world, and other people can feel that and they feel better about it, and they develop a deeper trust and relationship with you as well.
Yeah, and also giving yourself the ability to have the things you care about change. Because I know for me, that has came and gone. Like, there's certain things that meant a lot to me 10 years ago that don't mean as much to me now. And I feel like right now in my life, I have that happen as much as anything else. Is what I really care about completely changes. And sometimes you want to hold on to it and not let that go because it's part of your identity. But you're like allowing yourself to have a completely new aspect or passion in your life, and that's really important.
Yeah, I would say like what it looks like might change, but the overarching theme probably doesn't change as much.
Yeah.
And so I try and get people, like, when they align their values, to look at the time that they're spending doing their activities. And so I'll say, like, show me your calendar and I'll show you your values, to be able to see while you're spending that most valuable asset of your time. And if the business and the impact you want to create in the world, like, that might change a little bit, but the time that you're going to spend doing that might also change. I guess a better example would be, if you value your health and wellness, how you're going to go about doing that might change. Like, you might go on a strongman type of training program, then you might go on an ultra marathon training program, then you might go on a mountain biking training program, if they're all under the umbrella of health and wellness.
Yeah.
It's like that value isn't necessarily changing, but the way that it shows up in your life might.
And you've kind of embodied that little change.
Yeah, that's how I use some of mine.
I guess on that, since you brought it up, there was a video that I just saw you do the other day, which was I think it was the world record, right? For
the 2 hands anyhow.
2 hands anyhow, which is like, I really like your style with the fitness stuff, because like they're more obscure things that maybe not everyone even thinks about. They're not like the cookie cutter stuff, and I really like that approach. So how did you get onto this pursuit of like ancient records?
Yeah, so the 2 hands anyhow is a lift that was really common maybe like 150 years ago or 100 years ago. They call it the Bronze Age of strongman, which is like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And essentially you pick up 2 weights. You have to, well, it's more of how it finishes, right? So you have to finish with holding 2 weights or more overhead, and the weights aren't connected like a barbell. And so you can do that anyhow, any way you want to go about it. Some people would pick up a kettlebell, then they would pick up another kettlebell, transfer it over when it's overhead, then pick up another kettlebell, put 3 in one hand, and then lift one up. Like, you could really get creative on how you go about lifting the maximum weight.
Okay.
And so I like the puzzle, right? The puzzle for me brings me into a flow state, which is like the state of peak performance where I'm trying to match the skill that I have with the challenge that's in front of me. And so the challenge is how much weight overhead, and then I have different skills. Like, I'm really good at keeping my arms straight. I have a lot of power with my body from my Olympic lifting days. And so I kind of mix those 2 skills together to meet that challenge.
And what was the total weight?
375.
And that was 300 on a barbell in one hand.
Yeah.
And then a 75-pound kettlebell?
Yeah.
That's pretty...
Yeah.
It's okay. I could probably do better, but I just haven't tried it yet. Once I try it, I'm sure I'll do better. It's
one of those things that is, it's just very technical. Like, it's really, really technical for me, at least, with like the way that barbell needs to be. But again, going back to how I learned it from a technicality standpoint. So when I learned when I was 17, 18 years old, like, the bar was treated like a samurai would treat his sword. Like, you never put your foot on the bar. You never like walk in front of someone on the platform. Everyone else sat down. There was no phones. It was a very like conscious, like meditative type of space when you were lifting. And so taking that same attention into the two hands anyhow now is that if that bar is like a millimeter off topic, it's going to fall. Yeah. And so just being able to consistently keep it in that same pattern, get my hand into the right spot, reach down, build that muscle memory, then I was able to do it.
Did you have any moments where like so I guess you clean it, you jerk it, and then you're trying to get the one arm. Did you have any moments where it was like just came crashing down and everything was a disaster?
One time, yeah. So my bar at home is a little bit bent, and so like kind of getting it in the right spot on my hand is tricky. So like you said, clean it up, jerk it overhead, and try to do that quick because the whole lift takes 30 seconds, and that bar is just barreling down on you at all times. Like right when you start to pick it up off the ground, you're having to use your body to keep it in the air. Yeah. And so it's on your chest, you push it overhead, you kind of pop your hand over, and you're trying to get your hand in the right spot.
Sure.
And if it's like a millimeter off, you have to say, okay, am I just going to drop this and try it again, or do I waste some energy trying to get it back into the right spot? But one time it went a little bit forward into my thumb and just like all the weight came down to my thumb. But I just pulled my thumb away and it just came to the ground. And
there was no injuries, no big explosion.
No, and I actually had someone write on Instagram the other day, like hating on the lift a little bit, like that's just gonna cause a ton of pain, or that's stupid, you're gonna hurt yourself. And I'm like, you might hurt yourself. Like that makes sense, but it's almost like anything someone does. Like if you go out and run 100 miles, for you that's like pushing you, but relatively safe because you have experience doing that and you understand the risks and how to mitigate them and how to be responsible in that sense. If I went out and tried to run 100 miles, I've never done that before. And so right now, it probably wouldn't be the most safe thing for me. But as you start to expose yourself to those different stresses, you gain more knowledge, and then it really becomes safe, but it might look unsafe to someone else.
Sure. And I guess on that topic, you're not only pursuing the strongman stuff now, you're also pursuing the ultra route yourself. What's on the calendar this year in terms of like long distance running?
So my partner Kelly and I are going to do a 100-kilometer run in Zion in April together. And so we run the whole race virtually side by side. That's
amazing. What is that like when you guys finish together?
That's unbelievable. We've only done it one other time, a 50K in Moab, and the emotions, like seeing the finish line, getting towards the finish line, crossing the finish line, were like nothing I've ever experienced before.
I can only imagine. I've done it myself, and I have that same like overjoyed feeling when I see my crew. Mm-hmm. But I've never done it with somebody side by side. That seems like it'd be a pretty special and rare moment.
Yeah, it's super special. I mean, it's we have this analogy when we're running, because spending hours together working out, and so we obviously love each other and care about each other. But like anyone in a relationship, sometimes you need some space.
Yep.
And so we have this analogy of changing the channel. And so if one of us is talking about something and the other person's like, I need to like change the station, we just say, let's just change the station. Let's go next topic. Or
That's incredible.
Let's turn the radio off for a little bit and just like kind of hang out. And that our last race was like 6 hours. This one's going to be more than double that probably. And so we didn't have any like music or headphones or anything in on the last one. And I don't think we will on this one either, but we're just going to need some more channels to switch from.
Yeah. I'm hoping to join you guys down there. I think
Heck yeah.
As long as the foot is feeling good, I'm planning on making my way down there.
Amazing. It's going to be really beautiful.
Yeah, Zion, it's right outside, right? It's not in the park, it's outside the park?
I think it's right outside the park, yeah.
And you guys, this is the 50K that you did before, or you did a different 50K?
We're doing 100K in Zion, and we did a 50K together in Moab.
Okay. And with ultra running, I know you talk a lot about flow state in general. Mm-hmm. Is ultra running one of those things where you find flow, or is it because the time domain has increased so much that you're kind of tapping into something else?
That's a good question. There's definitely aspects of it that I'm in flow, and I think like it's a really long challenge. And so it's being, I can't say that I'm like dialed in that state of flow the entire time, but I'm able to move in and out of that a over the course of that long race?
Mm.
I would say it's something else. It's a good question.
Yeah, maybe we gotta dive into that and think about what do you call like a long-term flow, or like it's maybe that's more meditation at that point, because there's less stimulus than maybe a normal flow. Like bike riding, you're going downhill, you're super focused in the moment. Ultra's not like that for the whole 15 hours. You're kind of in space thinking about something else for a minute, and then you come back, and then you're eating, and then you're running. Yeah, it's a lot more.
I think it might be like a bunch of micro flow moments, because when I'm running, I'm like getting to the next aid station or getting to the next marker or the next mile. I'm like constantly breaking up the 62 miles that I have to run into smaller increments that seem more manageable.
Sure.
And then accomplishing that, gaining confidence from it. I almost kind of feel myself like a little Mario character, just like, cool, confidence, bam. Okay, let's keep going. Da, 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 da. Got some more. Dang. Like, keep moving along in that kind of way. And so that's kind of keeps it engaged, I guess, for the long run.
What led you to want to do ultra marathons? Like, coming from a strongman background, this is totally out of your wheelhouse. It's not your natural, like you're not a 135 pound, sprinter.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Just saying. But what led you to pursue the long distance runs?
I think I wanted to get into something that I was not great at.
Yeah.
I like testing the extremes and then like settling somewhere in the middle. And so just like unofficially set this record in some strongman thing, and then the day after go out for an 11-mile run. And then like, get a whole new challenge in that. It's like I'm really interested in what that challenge is and like what I can experience from that. And so running long distances has been something that historically I've always shied away from.
Sure.
And I've not enjoyed, but it's been something that I am enjoying the challenge of, more and more, and especially that time outside, the sun, like a lot of the seemingly simple things really do a ton for me.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand with the ultra world is you're not just getting the running, it's not going to a gym and running on a treadmill. You're basically handcuffing yourself into a ton of time on the trails and nature, because that in order to prepare for that 60, 100-mile bout, I've got to be on my feet a couple times for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours beforehand and get really comfortable with what it feels like to be on my feet for that long, what it feels like to run in the dark, what it feels like to fuel on the go. You're getting used to all this stuff out in nature versus just running on a treadmill.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever run on a treadmill. Maybe like maybe when I was really young, but like definitely not in the past decade. I don't think I've ever run on a treadmill.
How are you breaking down your ultra training? Like if someone was where you were just a couple years ago, no experience in the running world, what would be kind of your advice to them?
Go slow. Yeah, run really slow. That's something that I didn't understand in the beginning, and I ran my first 2 50-milers at an average heart rate of 170.
Wow.
And just like annihilated my adrenals. And they were in the same month. And so I'm proud that I like mentally and physically made it through that, but it was a lot of wear and tear on my body and my hormones in a lot of ways. And so now I really adopted like the zone running training where I just did my lactate threshold test yesterday.
Nice.
And so I have my new numbers, and I can kind of go off of, my heart rate to see what area of energy I'm using, whether it's like fat or carbohydrates or a combination of both. So I can do the running, recover from the running, and it doesn't just completely annihilate me like it used to do in the past.
So for people that aren't familiar with tris or long distance, what's lactate testing and training, and why would one person be interested in testing their lactate?
Yeah, so I'm by no means an expert in this, but this is what, from my understanding, your body, once your heart rate reaches a certain beats per minute, your body releases lactate into the bloodstream, and once that lactate's released into the bloodstream, it builds up lactic acid, which then creates like heavy muscles or tired legs or starts to wear you down. Yeah. And so when you're running for, at multiple hours at a time, you want to avoid that feeling because you'll bonk, which is basically run out of energy, and then have to stop the race or really, really slow down a ton, and it becomes, more difficult to continue. And so the goal is to be able to run without releasing that lactate into your bloodstream, depending upon the length of running that you're going to do.
So you're typically approaching it, you're getting your number, and then you're wearing a heart rate monitor during all your runs to kind of see if you're falling in that range?
Yeah, and I'm wearing a chest strap with the heart rate monitor, not just the watch.
The watches are not accurate.
No, it's literally not worth it at all. Like, I don't know how people can just wear the watch and not the heart rate strap and then think that that's accurate.
Yeah, for me, it's like I've had 2 watches now. I usually don't really end up wearing them, obviously, but I find that I just go off kind of intuition and perceived exertion. I feel like it's not a science. I've also never done the lactate threshold, and maybe you could convince me to do it. I think just because it costs money, I don't do it, but I just use like the relative exertion as kind of my gauge, and I try and stay in that conversational zone where if I could run right now and hold a conversation like we are right now, and sometimes I'll even talk to myself, to test it. I'll try and say like the Pledge of Allegiance, or I'll try and say something, and if I have to keep on stopping, then I know I'm definitely not in my zone 2 rate.
Yeah, I mean, from the research I've done, you want to stay as close to the top end of your zone 2 without going into what they call the gray zone, like zone 3, where you're not able to recover and you're not able to get that metabolic stimulus to like the mitochondria of your cells that can really adapt and help you create more efficient energy when you're trying to run a long way. And so being able to kind of know like really where that line is, that's a great test. The talk test is to kind of play with that line. But if you go over that for too long, which is really easy to do, at least for me, if I'm not conscious of it, because it's hard for me to be conscious of like when my heartbeats are at like 147 to 153, like that can kind of feel similar. Like 170 feels a lot different than that. But if I've just spent 5 minutes in my zone 3, then I've released all that lactate into my bloodstream, and then my body can't clear that as well. And so it's going to eventually lead to those tired legs and kind of groggy feeling that I already am naturally feeling as I'm trying to run around with 220 pounds on the trail.
How do you manage that when you're running with Kelly? If you guys are running together, it's very harmonious. You're through the fields, and one person feels like they're skipping and having a good time, the other person's just like completely out of breath. Like, does that ever happen where you aren't in synchronicity?
Well, no, not necessarily. We go to the lowest heart rate, right? Or the highest heart rate. Okay. So if I'm running and my heart rate starts to get to the top end of my zone 2 and hers is lower, then she'll go at a pace that works for me, and vice versa.
Okay. So, and it's kind of back and forth for you guys. It's not always necessarily like one person's heart rate's always lower.
Yeah, it's not.
Interesting.
It depends on like the terrain usually. Okay.
And for the average person, if they're not going to get their lactate threshold tested, how would you, there's some kind of way to like shorthand it, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we didn't get it tested in a lab. You can just go out for a run. So what we did was, and we're working with a coach that we got off of the website Training Peaks. Okay. And you can Google this and read. There's many different ways to test your lactate, but the tried and true one is to do an efficient warm up for like 5 minutes or so, kind of get your heart rate up into that zone 3 or 4, which would be like 160-ish plus beats per minute. I'm 33 years old, so around that age bracket, and then run as hard as you can for 30 minutes at a sustained pace. And so you don't want to go out too fast and then have to drastically slow down, but you want to run 30 minutes as fast as you can, like it was a race. Okay. And then take your average heart rate of that time, and that's like your lactate threshold. And for some athletes, you might want to do 45 minutes, maybe like max an hour, depending on how conditioned you are. Like you probably be fine with 45 minutes. We were told to do 30 minutes. I probably could have gone 45 with what I had. And then that number is, you take that number and you multiply it by 0.8 and by 0.9, and that would be your zone 2.
The 0.8? Oh, okay. The
0.8 of your lactate
would be the lower end, like the
lower end of your zone 2.
And 0.9 would be the top
higher end. Yeah.
Okay, so during your runs, you're kind of shooting for that 0.9 without going over it.
Yeah, depending on the stimulus of the run, but most of the runs I'm doing are going to be in that range. And so for me, I can maintain a super high heart rate for a long time. Like my heart rate can stay at 182 for about an hour. Okay. Which, like our friend Eric Hinman, his max heart rate I think is at like 170 something. But he can keep his heart rate at like a 30 or 1 for a long time. Yeah. And be running really fast. Like if my heart rate was at 130, I'm walking. And so it just depends on what your body has been conditioned to do and the type of training you've done. I've done a lot of anaerobic training, and so I can maintain that higher heart rate. And so my zone 2 is going to be really high. Like I just did the numbers yesterday. I think the high end is like 161, and then my bottom end is like in the high 140s.
Gotcha. And I think it's such a good message for folks, especially getting into it, because now folks look at Strava and they're like, oh, that guy's running like a 7-minute pace. That guy's running a 6:30 pace. And you really start to feel weird about publishing your zone 2 runs because, oh, my zone 2 is 9:30 pace. My zone 2 is 11-minute mile pace. And it gets into like this weird psychological game where people don't want to share their times because they're scared that other people are going to judge them. And we've like adopted this like weird culture into running where I feel like it could be really dangerous. So I always say, if you're getting into running, turn that little button on who can see into just you. Just you. You don't need to publish your runs to everybody when you're getting into running, because what's going to happen is you're going to blow yourself out of zone 2. You're going to be like, oh, I can't let everyone see that I'm running this slow, so I'm going to run way harder. And ultimately, you're not going to get any faster because you're just constantly burning yourself up.
I think that's a great tip. I think that's also like a little bit of like a Band-Aid on the thing of like really working to just be honest with where you're at. Sure. And not allowing yourself to compare. But it is super hard to do that. I mean, yeah. I'll help people. I started running a 16-minute mile when I started my zone 2 training. And that was in 2023 or 2022. Wow. And so now I'm in like the high 9s, low 10s. But yeah, I definitely was like, what the heck? I'm fit. I can do other things really well. Why am I not good at this? And the reason is I've never done it before. And I think with running specifically, it's so easy to compare to other people because not everyone, but most people can run. Yeah. Whereas like the 2 hands anyhow, like most people have no idea to how to comprehend what 300 pounds overhead with one arm would even feel like. Like they might have never even lifted one thing over their head and even know how much weight that is. Or if you lift up a 50-pound dumbbell over your head, to know like 50 pounds to 300 pounds, like I don't know the range there. Whereas running, you can sprint, and maybe your full-on sprint is what someone else is able to do for a whole marathon. Yeah. And so it can throw you off kind of in that way.
Yeah, it's hard because you feel like you could get there, right? And so you're like, I could get there. I could be as good as that person. Versus with you, it's like, well, I'm not even going to attempt that, so I'm not going to compare myself to Mike doing this. But there's so much more comparison with running, like you said, because we can all do it. Have you seen the Kipchoge challenge where
on the treadmill?
Yeah, you run as fast as he ran it for the whole time. Yeah. I want to try that. I still haven't done it, but I hate treadmills, honestly. I do not like them.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like I've said, I don't think I've ever been on a treadmill in the past. I can't remember last time I've been on a treadmill. Actually, at my friend Matthew Bickle's house, he has one of those curved treadmills.
Yeah, the assault runners.
And like over COVID, like we would go out there and walk and like trot and talk and stuff together.
I like the assault runner more than I like the motorized ones. Part of me feels weird about treadmills because couldn't you put it on like a low speed and jump, and you would technically be walking? Yeah. Right? So I don't know, it makes me feel weird because you don't actually have to advance. You could simply be moving upwards. And then I get in my head about that. I'm like, am I actually running this fast, or is this easier because I'm just elevating myself off the treadmill and re-landing?
Yeah, I mean, there's something with like locomotion too. With that, there's been some cool studies done with people that does bring a lot of joy. Like when your vestibular system, when your ears can feel the wind and can feel that motion, it does impact the way that you feel about what you're doing, which is why people love biking, running, surfing, skiing, things that they're human powered moving themselves, even non-human powered like motorcycles or whatnot.
Yeah, I feel another one is just getting from place to place using your own body's power. That's one of the coolest things about ultra running or doing a walkabout or backpacking or anything like that is like, wow, I really just made significant progress, moved from one environment through another environment and ended up in a completely different third place, all using my own human power. And for a lot of people, they go their whole life without feeling that because we're so adapted to cars and machinery.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the ultras. I've never run a marathon. I've never run an official half marathon, or I don't think I've even run a 10K, but I've run a couple ultras, and I think like the expectation of speed is really helpful because you're not running fast. Like some of the best ultra runners in the world will walk during a lot of their races.
Sure.
And so once I recognized that, it took a lot of pressure off of having to like run really fast. It's more about maintaining a speed and just constantly moving.
Yeah.
And then, kind of going through on that practice, which I really like. I like that long challenge. I like the time with myself. I like to be outside.
It feels like a more exploratory experience than like I'm just running, take a right, running, take a right, running. It's a lot more experiential than maybe like a marathon would be.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make an analogy to like strength training. Like I really struggle with this, where I'm taking my finger and just going like up and down, which would be like squat, bench press, deadlift, just like movement gestures are just like repetitive and up and down. I struggle with those because it would feel similar to me like with the running of just like making the right. I want to experience it. I want to challenge it. I want to play within that. And of course, the more strength you have from doing that, like, those great strength movements, the more tools you have to play with.
Yeah.
And same thing with running, like the more fit you are, the farther you can run, the more you can enjoy it. But now I definitely like to use my fitness rather than just like continue to get stronger. And like I ask the question a lot in many different instances, like what is enough? And one I had to ask myself with strength is like, what is enough? Like how much greater is my life going to be impacted if I can front squat 405 versus 315?
Yeah, that's true. Do you see yourself adding the like performance stuff you're doing now like back into your life in terms of coaching, or is the coaching going to always revolve around like more heart-centered stuff?
I think a lot of the stuff we are talking about is heart-centered. It's just defining what it is. And so I'll help people come up with like develop their own values. And then based on what they value, I can offer different suggestions from some experiences that I've had or some things that they might like to explore. But especially if someone's not sure with what it is that like brings them joy or what they like, they need to experiment with new things. Kind of like a young kid. Like I was saying before, I live with a 6-year-old. And if I said, do you want to go to swim lessons? He's like, I don't know. I've never done it before. Like, let me try it and then see how it feels. And so I take that same approach with some of my clients. Like, have you ever gone to a cooking class? Have you ever gone to a paint class? Have you ever gone rock climbing? Have you ever tried running? Like, start to explore with these different activities and then check in with yourself and see how you feel. When you're a young kid, it's really easy, right? Like you have those feelings, they come up right away. There's no shame in expressing them.
Yeah.
As we get older, the shoulds are louder, and then, we can move away from what it is that we truly want to do.
That's a great point. When you think about, or if you were a student and you were going to go look for a mindset or peak performance coach, somebody to help you explore or alter the path of your life, what are the things that you should be looking for in a coach? I'm completely unfamiliar, so I'm like, if I was looking for a coach, what would I look for? Because there's so many out there now. What's the best way?
It depends what you want to be coached in, what you want to be coached on. So getting clear on what is that you want to improve. Like for me personally, I don't shit on people. I don't tell them what to do. I help people uncover what it is that they want to do. And I do that through like direct questioning, listening, different types of frameworks that then they have those like, oh yeah, never thought of it like that. Okay, cool. And then I say, all right, great. Well, do you want to take action towards that? Yeah, I do. What kind of action do you want to take? Oh, I want to do this. Great. When do you want to do that? And you just keep pushing a little bit, keep moving people. You can't move them, but you can help them move themselves.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, that's a great coach. If I'm telling someone what to do, or if someone's telling you what to do, and saying you have to live, if you want to feel great, you have to live life in this way. They're just shitting on you. They're in some way like manipulating you in order to do something, either it's like sell a product or I don't know, whatever motive that they have. It's usually like a positive one, but I don't think that it's positive when you're telling other people how to live their life.
Sure. Yeah, it's a interesting thing. I think about it in my life. If I was a coach, I'd be like, everyone go out in the woods and, have less materialistic things around you, and you should, go run and wear hippie sandals. It's like, that's not going to get everyone where they want to be. Everyone has kind of a different destination that they're aiming for. So I like the idea of just kind of asking people what they want and helping them get there. It's kind of not exactly how I pictured coaching, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's a struggle that's in the industry. Is a lot of coaches will learn something and then they'll have like that beginner's mindset around it where they're like, this is the best thing ever. Everyone has to do this, or that. And then they'll like project a lot of that onto other people versus like for you, just sharing stuff that has worked for you and that you're interested in. And so I'm sure you had some type of problem, like Ryan 10 years ago had some type of problem, learned of these different techniques. They really helped you. And then you can share that with the world and talk to the person who might have those similar problems to you, and then help create different outlines or plans for them that, might get them the results they're looking for.
It's interesting. I could never be a coach, but if I was, that sounds like a great way to start. What's the worst, as a student, you being the student, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Okay, worst piece of advice I've ever gotten was, if you're 50% sure that you want to marry this person, then you should marry them.
And can you say who you got that from?
I don't remember his name. No, it was at, I don't remember who it was.
That seems kind of dangerous, if I'm being honest.
Super dangerous. I think it was coming from a good place of a lot of people, at least in a relationship realm, it's very hard to like do work, be vulnerable, put yourself out there. And so, naturally as human beings, we're kind of wired to find the fear and to like not allow ourselves to maybe go for the health or happiness that we really want. And that can show up a lot of times in relationship where we'll make up stories about someone else to protect their own ego. And I think he was more talking to that, like, don't make up stories to protect yourself. Like, trust the way that you're feeling about someone.
Interesting. So I think we could probably talk about this for all day, but I'm going to hit you with just a couple questions wrapping up. The one thing I'm curious about, because you have so many different records and achievements and things like that, what do you want to do more of, or what do you want to see yourself do more of in 2023?
I want to see myself serve more people. Yeah, I really love the coaching work that I get to do. Like when people reach out to me and are vulnerable with something that they're struggling with, and I get to help create more clarity for them so that they feel empowered to go take the action in their life that they want to live, that is like the most fulfilling and deeply rewarding thing that I could ever have, more than any money or success or world record or anything like that. And so really double down on that this year and hopefully for the rest of my life.
I think you have just like such a way with words and explaining that, and it just feels so well intentioned. I feel like when I hear a lot of people like, I'm a coach, I'm going to tell you how to fix your life, and it's like yours is just coming from a completely different place, and it feels a lot more trustworthy and enthusiastic while also being genuine. It's not like overemphasized or I'm better than you. It's just, I'm here to help you.
So I mean, I don't have the answers for you. I don't know what your best life is, but I love asking questions and learning more about it. And then I care about you. I mean, you're probably a bad example because you're my friend, so I am like a little bit emotionally invested in your life. But I really want you to be the best you that you can be, not the best version of you that I want you to be, if that makes sense. And a lot of times when we'll ask our partner or our family for advice or a question, they are usually well-intentioned, but will give us the best answer that they want for us to maintain, for us to be in the box that they've created for us.
Yeah.
And as we grow and expand out of that box, it can threaten them in a certain way, and then leads to, you know, us not being able to lead the life that we really want to live. And so as a coach, I'm not emotionally invested in your life. I can be an objective third party that just kind of helps you see things for what they are. And then you can see the things for what they are, and you're not like emotionally driven in it, and then you can make easier decisions on that.
That's a great point. Yeah, I've seen that surface in my life before, where someone's giving you a piece of advice they think is the right piece of advice, but they have a little bit of their own intention put into that because they know you on a certain deeper level. That's great.
Or they think they know you on a certain deeper level.
Sure.
Unless you've told them. And I think, like, you know, I always try to ask, like, is this something that you want support with? How do you want to be supported? It's a great question to that I ask a lot of my clients in relationship, if they're in a partnership. Like, what is the best way that, you know, this person can love you? What's the way that you want to be loved? And a lot of people get caught up in that answer. Like, I'm not really sure. I never thought of it. And I'm like, well, if you're having struggles and you don't know the answer, or like you don't have your own playbook of like how you want to be loved, then, and you're fighting, you're having arguments, it seems a little bit unfair to that person. And so probably need to spend some more time figuring that question out and then working through that. And a lot of times we just try to work through it in our own heads, which is a really crappy place to be because we're not able to hear ourselves say it out loud. When you like say something out loud, you hear it. And so you can hear like, oh yeah, that is actually how I feel, or that didn't sound right. That's not it. And you can start to develop a relationship with that intuition. And then you can take the truth of that and express it to someone.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of benefit out of hearing you speak about this. And if someone's interested in learning more or, you know, pursuing this kind of work, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
You can go to my website. It's mikeaidala.com. I lead 6-week men's groups, about 4 or 5 of those a year, and then I do one-on-one coaching for men and women. Sweet.
And yeah, I guess if anyone's resonating with your words, I think that's a great path for them to pursue.
Yeah, I really, you know, I love hearing from people who are interested in coaching. There's a spot on my website for a free 15-minute intro call. And if you're even the slightest bit curious about what it could be, I highly recommend you to reach out. I'm not going to try to sell you on anything. I'm not going to try to push anything on you. I just would love to learn a little bit more about you and answer some questions.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you, Mike, and I'm definitely going to listen to this one over a couple of times and try and impart some of your wisdom in my own life. So thank you so much for joining and sharing all your knowledge.
Yeah, thanks so much, brother. It's been great.
Yeah. All right, man. Stay wild, y'all.
Shazam.
That was so beautiful.